Good day, everyone. In today's episode, we will explore the pandemic, which includes the different pandemic that happened and the remarkable story behind the development and impact of the different vaccines.
Join us as we unravel the incredible contributions these vaccines have made to the humanity in the face of a global crisis.
I am Jashryl Aguspina.
And I am Angela Faye Roberto, and we are your hosts for today. Before anything else, let's welcome our lovely guest.
Hello, everyone. A pleasant day to all of you. My name is Vincent Siminig, and I am one of the representative in today's podcast.
Hello everyone, my name is John Patrick Percalin. I'm one of the guests for this podcast.
Hello everyone, I'm Donita Solatorio and I'm one of the guests for this podcast.
Good day, everyone. I'm Cedrick Manalo, also one of the guests for this podcast.
And I am Jasper Almazan, also one of the guests for this podcast.
Welcome to
Pandemic Chronicles. Let's not wait anymore, shall we?
I'll go first then. Firstly, we need to understand what pandemic is. So what exactly is a pandemic? Let's break it down. Pandemic is an outbreak of a disease that occurs over a wide geographic area, affecting an extensive portion of the population. It's not just about the spread of this disease, but also the scale of its impacts.
Speaking of impacts, let's talk about the deadliest pandemic in history. Can somebody give me one?
Oh me, I think I knew. If I remembered correctly, our science teacher before mentions the plague of Justinian. He said it is one of the deadliest pandemic in history.
That's correct. The plague of Justinian is indeed one of the deadliest pandemic. It is now confirmed to be a bubonic plague. It reached Constantinople, capital of the late Roman or Byzantine Empire, killing 10,000 people a day. It killed about 30 to 50 million people in total. It was perhaps the first major outbreak of a bubonic plague the world have seen, and records suggest that it extended across continents, reaching Roman Egypt, the Mediterranean, Northern Europe, and the Arabian Peninsula. It lasted from 541 to 549.
Bubonic plague, is it? The Black Death is also a bubonic plague too, right?
Yes, indeed. So it is also one of the deadliest pandemic, way worse than the Justinian plague. The second pandemic of bubonic plague likely sprang up in northeastern China, killing 5 million people. It moved west through India, Syria, and Mesopotamia. In 1346, it struck in trading port called Kappa in the Black Sea. Ships from departing Kappa carried trade goods and also carried rats who carried Yersinia pestis. In October 1347, 12 such ships docked at Messina in Sicily, the hulls full of dead and dying sailors. By the time harbor authorities realized what the ships brought, it was too late. Over the next 5 years, the Black Death killed almost half of Europe.
No way, the Black Death is so terrifying. I can't believe such a pandemic can cause so much chaos and casualties. I feel bad for those people that experience it.
True, it's sad, but such pandemics continue to arise, like the new word smallpox. It may not be worse than the Black Death, but it still kills about 25 to 56 million people in 1520 to early 60s. Though smallpox had been a familiar scourge in many parts of the world for centuries, when the first Europeans arrived on American shores, 20 to 60% of those it infected in Europe died. Survivors emerged immune, but the pre-Columbian indigenous people of America were immunologically weak to the variola virus that landed aboard a Spanish ship at present-day Veracruz, Mexico in April 1520, hidden in the body of an infected enslaved African man. The continent was perfectly vulnerable.
And at addition to that, I would like to share something that I read before in an article. It said that a new strain of bubonic plague re-arose during the year 1855 to 1959.
Oh yes, it had never completely gone away. But the bubonic plague resurged violently in 1855, beginning in Yunnan, China, spread to the port cities of Guangzhou and Hong Kong by 1894. Outbound ships seeded burgeoning clusters in Bombay, Calcutta, Cape Town, and Francisco by the turn of the century. It didn't stop there. Before 1959, some 12 million people across the world, half of them in India, would be dead.
Science was catching up, meaning that this would be the final pandemic of the bubonic plague. The causative bacterium Yersinia pestis was identified in 1894 in Hong Kong. The observation that a litter of dead rats in the streets often preceded an outbreak finally drew scientists to the bacterium's vehicle, rat fleas, who infected humans when their first host died.
I heard that 1918 flu was also a deadly one.
Oh, can you tell us about it?
Oh, sure. 5 days after the pandemic, influenza of 1918 made landfall at British Mission, a remote village in Alaska. 90% of the community was already dead. In Philadelphia, priests collected corpses in horse-drawn carts. In parts of the India, the devastation was so complete that bodies were left out for the jackals to pick at. It arrived in Bombay in June 1918 on troop ships, returning soldiers from the battlegrounds of the World War I, and by year's end had claimed possibly as many as 18.5 million lives in South Asia. Freetown, Sierra Leone lost 4% of its population in 3 weeks. Persia may have lost as many as 22% of its people. 50 to 100 million people the world over died before rising immunity blunted the virus threat.
That 1980 flu sure is deadly, huh?
Yes, it is. But are you guys also aware about the pandemic of HIV or AIDS?
Yes, and I heard that it still exists up to this day.
What about it?
The HIV virus may have first crossed over from chimpanzees to humans in the Democratic Republic of the Congo via blood contact around 1920. It spread more or less undetected until 1981 when a virulent pneumonia and rare cancer called Kaposi sarcoma began to crop up among gay men in the US. By the year's end, there were 270 reported cases, 121 of them had already died. It's possible that by 1980, HIV was already on 5 continents, infecting between 100,000 and 300,000 people. By 1987, when the WHO launched the global program on AIDS, an estimated 5 to 10 million people worldwide were living with HIV. Today, despite massive advances in the treatment and management of HIV, it remains incurable.
Now, let's move on with the most recent pandemic that we encountered, shall we?
Gladly. Since we are now discussing the pandemics, so how about we focus on the current pandemic that is currently sweeping the globe? COVID-19, right? Undoubtedly, none of us are fully informed or aware of COVID-19. So for us to learn more about it, why don't we summarize all the data that we may have for us to have a true understanding of this subject?
I agree. Honestly, there are different confusing questions that came into my mind about this pandemic, and I can't answer it all just by using my knowledge.
Before we start answering those questions, let me introduce some information about COVID-19. The novel human coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 was first reported in Wuhan, China in 2019 and subsequently spread globally to become the 5th documented pandemic since the 1918 flu pandemic. In addition to that, the first official cases of COVID-19 were recorded on the 31st of December 2019. World Health Organization or WHO was informed of cases of pneumonia in Wuhan, China, with no known cause. On the 7th of January, the Chinese authorities identified a novel coronavirus temporarily named 2019 nCoV as the cause of these cases.
So this virus really spreads day by day. It really affects the way of living of every person and causes different tragedies that the world is not prepared for. According to the World Health Organization, by September 2021, almost 2 years after COVID 19 was first identified, there had been more than 200 million confirmed cases and over 4.6 million lives lost to the disease. Here, we take an in depth look at the history of COVID 19 from the first recorded case to the current efforts to curb the spread of the virus with worldwide vaccination programs.
Is it true? This virus came to just an animal?
What animal?
A bat.
Yes, investigations 3 years after the SARS pandemic started showed that the related coronaviruses were being carried by horseshoe bats, rhinolopus in China. These together make up the species SARS-related coronavirus, which belongs to the beta coronavirus genus, Sarvicovirus subgenus. The progenitor of SARS-CoV was seeded in the intermediate animal host, most likely civet cats, by Sarvicovirus that was present in horseshoe bats.
Well, there is this rumor that uh, coronavirus coronavirus disease came from eating bats, which has caused so much damage to the world. Sometimes can't even believe what is happening. Can't really imagine how a small thing can affect all of us. We should be more careful in every situation we encounter.
Hmm, guys, wait, hear me out. I read the trivia on the website. I mean, no, not the trivia, but you can consider this as a rumor about this crisis in the world. It actually said here that these are just set up or planned by the country where it comes from.
What country did the COVID come from?
No, you're not listening. I said a while ago that it came from the country of China.
Shh, wait, just listen, guys, please.
Okay, but what do you exactly mean by a setup or planned?
Well, they said that the Chinese government said it all, from the virus to solutions like vaccines, just for the economy to grow. They said that because of this pandemic, the Chinese government earned a lot of money because most of the vaccines, face masks, alcohol, and different medicine that are useful for this virus came from their country. They also said that Chinese government is ready for this situation because they are the ones who created the virus before they spread it. And they make sure that they are prepared for possible solutions that will earn them too much. How about you guys? What can you say about it?
Quite a stretch, but we can't be sure if it's true. How about you explain further what really happened so we can understand more?
Okay. Due to the widespread of the virus, countries all over around the world banned travels across countries to avoid faster transmissions of the virus and put areas within the country locked or quarantined as this was said to be the best solution to stop or decrease the number of infected.
I think every one of us has experienced this, but could you please elaborate what quarantine means? For further and additional knowledge for the viewers.
Okay, we are always mentioning quarantine, and I will explain it further for you. Definition is a state or place of isolation of a person who may have been exposed to a contagious diseases. Objective of isolation is to lower the chance that a person or animal could transfer diseases to others. This is where the term community quarantine used. That means a large group of people isolated in other areas. However, I share to you, there's actually an existing term for that definition, and that is the term lockdown. However, it was said that the term makes Filipinos panic and intimidate, as the president said in his speech during the early pandemic day.
We all know that during lockdown, people only has limited time going outside and could only get outside if you have valid reasons such as buying necessities, buying emergency kits, essential things, and etc.
That is true. Some residents required to acquire vaccination cards during the most dangerous days amid COVID. no vaccination card to access to go outside, and no access even going to animals and groceries. Barangay officials or securities are also present during the day and night, making sure that no civilian will defy the protocols.
The experience during lockdown may be hard and challenging, but due to strict protocol, it gives a positive impact to the society, especially to the spread of the infectious disease. Based on the statistics, it lessens or slows the rapid increase of number of infected people, which is very good news.
However, the pandemic also bring negative impact to the country, starting off with its inflation rate. Within the first 2 years of pandemic, inflation rate rises from 2.1% in 2019 to 2.7 in 2020. It is according to the statistics given by Asian Development Bank website. No wonder why goods become expensive over time.
Aside from that, it also affects the unemployment rate, which became double within 2 years. 5.1% is recorded rate during the start and in 2020 become 10.3%.
It is much of a hassle when shortages also become an issue during the early pandemic year. Due to the pandemic, people started to panic buying face masks, alcohol, bandages, and other health-related materials were in demand, resulting in a shortage. Even hospitals experienced shortages of alcohol, face masks, and other medical materials that can also be bought in public.
Over the years, one of the most significant challenges we have faced and continue to face is the impact of pandemics. The COVID-19 pandemic, for instance, has tragically claimed over 6.9 million lives worldwide, with 692 million confirmed cases. This crisis has led to various severe consequences, including widespread job losses due to mandatory lockdowns. In 2020 alone, lockdowns resulted in 114 million job losses, equivalent to a devastating $3.7 trillion labor income loss. Addressing these critical issues require us to develop effective strategies for preventing or mitigating the impact of future pandemics.
So, now we will examine the role of science and technology in combating the spread of viruses.
Exactly. Approximately 70% of emerging viral diseases, such as HIV, AIDS, Ebola, SARS, and even influenza, are zoonoses, which are infections that originate in animals and cross over to humans. While the origin of SARS-CoV-2 is linked to animals, the specific animal source remains uncertain.
Well, that's where the role of our advances are. The critical point is that we can utilize these scientific methods to study the behavior of such viruses and leverage this knowledge to develop vaccines against them.
Yep, exactly. Currently, there are two promising types of vaccines that have proven effective across generations. Instead of using weakened pathogens, these vaccines utilize a small piece of genetic material, or the mRNA, to instruct our cells to produce a harmless part of the virus, known as the spike protein. Our immune system recognizes this protein as a threat and generates antibodies to combat it. This immune memory allows our body to defend against the virus upon future exposure, thereby preventing severe illness.
Is there another way of creating vaccine?
Another vaccine approach, exemplified by Novavax, contains protein fragments of the virus, including the spike protein. An adjuvant is included to enhance our immune system's response to the protein. Following this immunization, our body can swiftly respond to the actual virus, providing protection against infection. These vaccine advancements provide hope in conquering the pandemic and pave the way for a healthier and safer future.
I'm guessing that they went with the second approach for the safety of the people.
Now, turning our attention to the technology used for COVID-19 tracing. Firstly, real time reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, or the RRT PCR, is a laboratory test employed to detect the presence of the COVID-19 coronavirus. This test identifies the virus genetic material, or what we call the RNA, in samples taken from individuals, typically using swabs from the nose or throat. By pinpointing unique parts of the virus RNA specific to COVID 19, such as its genes, the test accurately identifies the virus. Fluorescent dyes illuminate the virus RNA when detected, indicating its presence in the sample.
Secondly, infrared technology offers a non-invasive means of measuring body temperature. Devices like digital thermometers or thermal scanners detect the infrared rays emitted by our bodies, translating them into numerical temperature readings. This touchless method is quick, precise, and minimizes the spread of germs, making it particularly valuable during health crises like COVID-19. Infrared technology serves as a reliable tool for monitoring body temperature in various settings, such as airports, schools, and workplaces, contributing to public health.
Lastly, the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, or the ELISA, is a specialized test used to determine if an individual has been infected with a specific virus, such as the one causing COVID 19. A small blood sample is collected and tested for virus-related components, such as the antigens or the antibodies, produced by the body to fight the virus. And if the virus or its components are present, they bind to specific antibodies in the test, causing a color change, a bit like a lock and key mechanism. This color change helps doctor diagnose infections accurately, facilitating early intervention and safeguarding public health.
19 pandemic emerged as a global health crisis in 2020, impacting lives and economies globally. Despite challenges, the scientific community rapidly collaborated to create vaccines against the virus. Scientists began by studying the virus, sequencing its genome to uncover its genetic makeup, a crucial step in designing effective vaccines.
What is the first vaccine to be discovered?
First vaccine to emerge were both Pfizer and Moderna, focused on creating mRNA vaccines that contain genetic instructions to produce a viral spike protein. This protein triggers the immune system to produce a defense response without causing the full-blown disease.
Last time I checked, I think there are also the Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Sinovac, right?
Yup, Johnson& Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Sinovac adopted more traditional methods, employing weakened or inactive virus particles to stimulate an immune response.
There are probably many ways of how they concluded that the vaccine is truly safe for humans.
Certainly, before moving to clinical trials, a crucial phase helped researchers weed out less promising vaccine candidates and improve them for human trials. After successful clinical trials, vaccine faced thorough evaluation by health regulatory agencies like the FDA and EMA. Emergency use authorization sped up vaccine deployment during the pandemic, with full approvals granted later as more long-term data was gathered. Once approved, manufacturing scaled up to meet global demand. The distribution and administration of vaccine pose significant logistical challenges as they require ultra-cold storage. That governments, international organizations, and private sector collaboration step in to coordinate efficient distribution, particularly to low and middle income countries.
So now, how about we take a closer look at some of the vaccines that were used in the Philippines during this challenging time?
Hey, I can help with the explanation.
Sure, then I'll start with Pfizer. It is one of the earliest vaccines to receive approval and be administered in the Philippines.
The Moderna COVID-19 vaccine, also known as mRNA-based vaccine, was another option available in the Philippines.
The AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, developed in partnership with the University of Oxford, uses a viral vector technology and was widely used in the country's vaccination campaign.
The Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine, developed by China's Sinovac Biotech, utilizes an inactive virus to stimulate an immune response and was distributed
The Johnson&
and
Johnson
administered in
COVID-19
the
vaccine,
Philippines.
developed by the Johnson Pharmaceutical Companies, utilizes a viral vector and offers the advantages of a single-dose regimen.
Vaccines brought forth some commonly observed effects in the Philippines.
Within these vaccines, there will always be side effects to us, which is normal due to our body having to fight the foreign substance that entered our body, which in this case is the vaccine that is used to us.
Well, vaccines have demonstrated efficacy in lowering the risk of severe symptoms such as difficulty in breathing, pneumonia, and respiratory failure, which could lead to hospitalization or death. Vaccinated individuals who contact the virus are less likely to spread it to others. This effect is crucial in controlling the spread of COVID 19 within communities and achieving herd immunity.
Vaccines have shown some effectiveness against COVID-19 variants, though the level of protection may vary. By reducing the spread of the virus, vaccine may also help limit the emergence of new variants.
COVID 19 vaccine can lead to temporary side effects. Example, when I had my first vaccine, I experienced pain at the injection site, felt exhausted, and wanted to lie down in bed. These side effects are usually mild and will go away within days, as per the doctor's advice when I have taken my vaccine. Severe allergic reactions are rare but possible. Vaccination centers are prepared to address them effectively.
What about the other vaccines?
In some cases, like Pfizer and Moderna, have been linked to rare but serious side effects, namely myocarditis and pericarditis. Despite this, the risk of these effects is minimal compared to the benefits of vaccination. Vaccine effectiveness varies due to factors like age, health conditions, and variants.
Well, widespread vaccination has encouraged public health measures such as easing of lockdowns and restrictions, allowing for safer social interactions and reopening of businesses and schools.
In the way they develop the vaccine, I'm assuming that it is not free.
I think you are mistaken. In the Philippines, COVID 19 vaccines were being provided for free to individuals through the government's vaccination program. The government sourced vaccines through various deals and partnership with different vaccine manufacturers.
Finally, let's look at the places where the COVID-19 vaccines were made available in the Philippines. Does anyone know where we can accommodate vaccines?
I do know where you can find vaccines, like vaccination centers, hospitals, health clinics, local health centers, mega vaccination sites, mobile vaccination teams, workplace vaccinations, shopping malls and commercial centers, universities and schools. Online registrations and appointment were all used to ensure accessibility and expedite the vaccination process in the Philippines.
Speaking of vaccines, normal vaccines are single dose or two doses, though some of the workplaces and schools require more. Some are not. These additional doses of vaccines are called boosters, which is also called the third dose.
Rarely see any place where they offer boosters though.
Well, the places to get booster are also the same place as where you get your first dosages. But now in NCR, you can get booster shots in SM Grand Mall Central in Caloocan, Robinson's Town Mall in Malabon, SM City East Ortigas in Pasig, Marikina Sports Complex, Venice Grand Canal Mall in Taguig, SM City Manila, Robinson Place Manila, Lucky Chinatown, SM Mega Mall, Green Hills Vera Mall in San Juan, Ayala Mall South Park in Muntinlupa, SM South Mall in Las Piñas, and SM Fairview in Quezon City.
So what boosters are available to those who already have the first dosage?
The Department of Health has allowed the mix and match of vaccine brands when it comes to the first two dosages of the vaccine and the booster shot. It shortly means that if you receive two Pfizer shots, then after 6 months you can receive another shot of the same brand. Though there is no certain brand that needs to be matched, DOH recommended Moderna, Pfizer, and Sinovac as booster brands regardless of what the first dosages are.
I assume that we are professionals that are giving these dosages.
We have our nurses and doctors to thank them for all their sacrifice in order to give us their services, to help us to our lowest health point. They did their best to make sure that we are healthy and we are taken care of. They made a lot of sacrifice to help complete strangers during the pandemic where a virus is going around. They never turned their back on us and instead even helped us and accommodate us in order to save our lives. Without them, the heroes of the pandemic, I don't think will survive.
We are very grateful for our pandemic heroes for doing their best during our most vulnerable state. So, there are so many events and situations that happened during COVID-19. Right, guys?
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
Yes,
So, give some happenings or situations that you've encountered before, during, and after COVID-19. Can someone share?
Here, let me share mine. Back in year 2019, pandemic really gave me a hard time. I can say that it really affects my mental health as I notice the differences about my attitude compared before and even this time ahead. Not to mention that we are also having online class that time. So there's so much adjustment happening during those days. I became emotionally sensitive, become anxious, scared, and having an unstable mood. Fortunately, everything goes back to normal after the long day of quarantine.
Thank you, Siminig, for that. Can anyone share their experiences or situations during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I also want to share mine. So many things have changed after the pandemic, and one of them is how I live or what my personality is. Before, I was not stressed. I am psychologically stable and not under pressure. But since the pandemic began, a lot has changed. I've had numerous difficulties that even though aren't really related to the pandemic, but I'm sure that they would have been different if it hadn't happened. Perhaps I can fix them if I can leave the house again and hang out with my friends, but I can't. At that time, the only I can do is to stay at home. The pandemic has ceased after years. I'm like a prisoner who has been released after several years of imprisonment. I was extremely happy at that time, but now it's different since I've been formed by the past. Because of it, I grew strong and mature enough to deal with various issues in my life.
Thank you for that, Manalo. Can someone again share their experiences or situations during COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, for me, the pandemic has caused some changes in the way we live our lives today. One thing I noticed during this time is that people have become more conscious about practicing basic hygiene regularly. Before the pandemic, not everyone paid much attention to washing hands, using hand sanitizers, and keeping a safe distance, especially when sneezing or coughing. But now, it's common to see people being more careful with their hygiene and health. People are even getting into activities like jogging and exercising more often. So the pandemic has definitely influenced our daily habits.
It's hard for us during the COVID-19, especially the transition to the new normal after the pandemic. COVID-19 has been a defining moment in human history, reshaping the way we live, work, and interact. As the world gradually emerged from the grips of the pandemic, societies underwent profound changes to adapt to the lessons learned during the crisis. Health and safety protocols, once considered temporary measures, have now become ingrained in daily life. Face masks and hand sanitizers have become essentials, accessories, and social distancing practices remain integral to our routines.
We would like to add some informations about the measures to consider and preventive measures this pandemic outbreak.
Let's talk about the measures to consider during the pandemic outbreak.
First one, early detection and response. Swift identification and containment of outbreaks are crucial. Timely data sharing and international collaboration improve preparedness.
our public health infrastructure, strengthen healthcare systems to handle surges and cases, providing adequate resources, facilities, and medical personnel.
The third one is vaccination. We need to develop, distribute, and administer vaccines efficiently, achieve herd immunity, and reduce transmission.
Next is the information dissemination. Their communication from authorities to the public helps prevent misinformation and panic.
Travel restrictions. Implement travel advisories, restrictions to limit the virus spread.
Next, remote work and education. Encourage remote work and online learning to reduce person to person contact.
And the last one, research and development. Invest in research for diagnostics, treatments, and prevention strategies.
Now, let's do discuss about the preventive measure for the pandemic outbreak.
First, vaccination campaigns. Prioritize widespread vaccination to reduce transmission and severe cases.
Hygiene practices. Promote regular hand washing, use of sanitizers, and respiratory hygiene.
The next one is the practice of social distancing. Encourage the physical distancing in public spaces and limit gatherings.
Mask mandates require mask wearing within crowded or enclosed environments.
Quarantine and isolation. Isolate infected individuals and quarantine exposed individuals to break the chain of transmission.
Surveillance and testing. Maintain robust testing and surveillance systems to detect and manage outbreaks.
And for the healthcare capacity, build surge capacity in healthcare systems to handle increased patient loads.
All the things that is mentioned a while ago is very helpful. Make sure to remember it all.
Thank you so much for tuning in today's episode. Before we wrap things up, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude to our incredible guests and listeners. Your support and engagement means the world to us.
We hope you've enjoyed today's discussion as much as we did. Remember, if you want to stay updated on future episodes, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. That's all for today, but don't worry, we'll be back next year with another exciting episode. Until then, remember to stay curious, keep learning, and take care of yourselves.
Once again, we thank you for being part of the podcast, and we hope that you have gained knowledge and ideas that give insight and learning to all of you. Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Bye everyone.
Bye
Bye
everyone.
bye!
Thank you for
Bye.
listening.
Bye bye.
Bye.